Welcome to the compliance updates for August 2022 in the Western region. In California, on August 4th, 2022, the Office of Administrative Law approved amendments to Title 27, California Code of Regulations by adopting sections 25697.38 through 24607.47 into Title 27 of the California Code of Regulations. The new section addresses exposures to cannabis smoke and Delta-9 THC. The new regulations provide non-mandatory, specific safe harbor exposure warning methods of the transmission and content of retail products that can expose consumers to cannabis smoke or Delta-9 THC via inhalation, ingestion, or dermal application. And for environmental exposures to cannabis smoke and Delta-9 THC at businesses where smoking of cannabis or vaping or dabbing of Delta-9 THC occurs. The regulation will be effective on October 1st, 2022, and include a 1-year phase-in period and an unlimited sell-through provision for products manufactured and labeled with compliant warnings before October 1st, 2023. Another update out of California, just DCC reminding you to take the right Cal OSHA training to stay compliant. So here's what the update had to say. Operating a safe workplace is not only the right thing to do, but also an important part of staying compliant with your cannabis license. All licensees must take the necessary steps to protect their employees from health and safety issues related to their work. Because there's been some confusion about which Cal OSHA course to take, DCC has updated the Canna Connect page with the right information. Check out Cal OSHA's requirements for cannabis businesses and make sure, 1, you're up to date on the requirements and regulations that apply to your business. 2, you have an up-to-date injury and illness prevention program. 3, staff have completed or are enrolled in the Cal OSHA 30-hour standards for general industry training, not the federal OSHA 30-hour training. As an employer, you need to have a written plan to identify and correct health and safety risks. You also need to provide regular safety trainings for staff. DCC and the Department of Industrial Relations have a variety of tools and resources to help you meet this requirement so you can get to the business of running your business safely. Check out the Cannabis Industry Health and Safety webpage. And also just note from a business record standpoint in California, any type of training you do complete, that needs to be in your training records of who conducted the training, who attended the training, what was the contents of the training, and what date did that training occur. All right, let's go on over to Colorado. Okay, so in Colorado, this notice is to inform stakeholders that on August 9th, 2022, the state licensing authority issued an adoption order for emergency rules. The purpose of these emergency rules are to amend Rule 2-245 and Rule 2-265 to implement Executive Order D 2022-034 and House Bill 22-1383. The adopted rules are effective immediately. These amended rules were also presented during our public work group meetings in July, and we would like to thank all of our stakeholders who continue to participate in this year's rulemaking through participation in the work group. If you have any questions or anything like that, I hit up Danielle Henry at danielle.henry@state.co.us. Another one out of Colorado, this one is for the retailers and preventing underage sales. So the MED is issuing this industry bulletin to remind licensees to remain diligent in their daily operations and measures taken to prevent unauthorized access to regulated cannabis. To date, this year, the MED has conducted over 190 underage compliance checks utilizing underage operatives. Among underage compliance checks completed, 4 businesses have made sales to underage operatives. This demonstrates a 98% compliance rate. Unauthorized sale of regulated cannabis to an individual under the age of 21 is considered a license violation affecting public safety, the #1 most severe violation here in Colorado. Businesses must remain vigilant in establishing internal measures to prevent underage access. And as the MED continues to monitor licensee compliance, it will evaluate business practices licensees have adopted to prevent unauthorized underage sales. Underage sales can lead to administrative and criminal action initiated by the state, from which sanctions may include but not limited to fines, license suspension, and license revocation. Owners and employees of regulated marijuana stores should review the content of this bulletin and evaluate their internal controls, staff training resources, and best practices licensees can implement to prevent underage access. So, yeah, right here in the compliance tip, 2 points of verification. 1, when the person walks into the door. 2, at the time of sale, right when they enter the limited access area at the time of entering, going to the counter and completing the sales transaction. There should be 2 verifications, so it's pretty mind-boggling that even though we scored a 98% here in Colorado for these underage compliance stings, yes, it's still an A, but there were still 4 businesses that failed this, and they're supposed to have 2 points of verification there. They also dive into standard operating procedures in training. Everyone should absolutely have an SOP for age verification and dispensing. And then they also go into some additional best practices to consider. Okay, and another update for Colorado. So this is just another summer rulemaking process for the Science and Policy Rulemaking Meeting. So it happened on Friday, August 12th, 2022. The division has provided a tentative agenda and proposed rule revisions to encourage interested stakeholders to plan their participation ahead of time. Leading up to each scheduled stakeholder meeting, the division encourages interested stakeholders to review the agenda, the proposed rule revisions, and any other relevant materials. And this year's stakeholder meeting will provide opportunities for broad input by all attendees. All members of the public are invited to attend these stakeholder meetings to provide oral comment during the comment period. All right, and we got another compliance tip in Colorado from the MED. And this is the topic of required patient documentation for medical marijuana transfers or sales over the statutory limits. I really hate that they call these transfers and not sales. I think that naming convention is just confusing. So just kind of keep that in mind as we talk through this. So the applicable rules and statutes is 44-10-501 subsection 10. Rules are MED Rules 3-905, also MED Rules 5-110 and 5-125. So the MED is issuing a compliance tip to highlight certain regulations and provide guidance to licensees regarding the documentation required when making transfers to sales to medical marijuana patients who purchase over the statutory limits of medical cannabis. This compliance tip is being released in addition to prior industry bulletin from December 9th, 2021 regarding statutory changes to medical marijuana transfers, sales, and a metric support bulletin January 25th, 2022 regarding medical marijuana patient sales FAQs. So the statutory limits for medical marijuana transfers sales to patients are 2 ounces of medical cannabis flower or 8 grams of medical cannabis concentrate for a patient 21 years of age or older, or 2 grams of medical cannabis concentrate for a patient between 18 and 20 years of age, or medical marijuana products containing a combined total of 20,000 milligrams. When patients purchase individually or in combination more than the amounts listed above, these patients are required to provide the medical cannabis store with the following information. Number 1, the identification, a hard or electronic copy of the patient's proof of identification. Number 2, the medical marijuana registry card, a hard or electronic copy of the patient's registry card. Number 3, a primary store designation. So this is a written authorization from the patient showing the patient has elected to register with the medical cannabis store. The physician recommendation / certification form, a physician's recommendation showing the amount of medical cannabis recommended to the patient and maximum THC potency authorization, and uniform certification form if one of the following apply. 1, for patients 21 years of age or older who are authorized to purchase more than 8 grams of medical cannabis concentrate. For patients 18 and 20 years of age who are authorized to purchase more than 2 grams of medical cannabis concentrate. For patients who have physician certification recommended more than the statutory limit of medical cannabis flower, medical cannabis products, or medical cannabis product concentrates, whose registry card expires in the calendar year of 2023 or later, 2022 or later for the medical cannabis concentrate. So the uniform certification form can be found on the MED's resources webpage. The physician recommendation / certification form can be found on the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environmental's medical marijuana registry webpage. This information must be digitally and or physically maintained by the medical cannabis store. 6 months of records must be maintained at the premise, with the 3 preceding calendar years may be maintained on or off the premise. And that just applies to all business records, so keep that in mind. That is one big thing that I see with clients. I'm like, hey, how long do you need to maintain your records? So like, for 3 years. And I'm like, 3 years? It's this entire year and then the preceding 3 years is what you have to maintain records for. So just keep that in mind. In addition, for all medical cannabis transfers over the statutory limits, the patient must be registered in metric at the medical cannabis store performing the transfer sale. And then beginning January 1st, 2023, the transition to obtaining a uniform certification form for all patients who have recommendations over the statutory limit for any category of marijuana will be complete. Therefore, as of January 1st, 2023, all medical cannabis stores who sell over the statutory limit for any category of medical cannabis must have both a uniform certification form and a physician recommendation certification form on file. In addition to the other listed documents noted above for each patient making such a purchase, if a patient does not provide both a uniform certification form and a physician recommendation / certification form, the patient cannot purchase more than the statutory limit. So work this into your checklist. When you have a medical patient that is over the statutory limit, make sure that you do have this in your SOP for age verification and dispensing to make sure that you do not go over their limit, and most importantly, you have all of the record retention you need to stay within compliance with these regulatory requirements. Okay, in Montana, we have quite a few different updates happening right now in Montana. So first, let's talk about waste management. After the expiration of the 72-hour period, and a licensee may dispose of marijuana stalks and stems without rendering them unusable pursuant to subsection 3 by releasing them to a third-party contractor to render them unusable. A licensee must provide the department with a copy of the waste removal agreement with the third-party contractor before commencing services and must remain the contract in the binder of documents required by ARM 42.39.102 subsection 6. The third-party contractor may process marijuana stalks and stems into non-marijuana products or otherwise render the marijuana stalks and stems unusable. All right, in Nevada, so at the July 26, 2022 board meeting, the Nevada Cannabis Compliance Board, CCB, considered the following proposed language for Nevada Cannabis Compliance Regulation 12.065, which states, cannabis treatment. If any cannabis or cannabis product has been treated with any thermal process, ionizing radiation, chemical, or other processes approved by the board or board agents for the purpose of reducing or eradicating microbial contamination at any time post-harvest, the label must include the method of treatment and the following statement: This product has undergone treatment using the method in bold lettering. They are not messing around here. Like, that has to be on the label these days, which is not on the label here in Colorado. As NCCR 12.065 remains under review, the CCB is requesting public input on any suggested changes or additions to the proposed language on the label. Please submit any recommendations regarding language for the label to regulations@ccb.nv.gov no later than August 19th. And then another one in Nevada. So the Nevada cannabis compliance regulations have been updated on their CCB's website to reflect the amendments proposed by the board at the June 28th, 2022 meeting. Be advised that several of these changes affect all cannabis established types. And this includes Regulation 1, 4, 5, 6, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 15. All right, and then another one in Nevada, just letting you know, CCB is hosting live webinars to apply for a cannabis consumption lounge, which is so exciting. Okay, in New Mexico recreational cannabis supply challenges ease as production ramps up. So, more recreational cannabis cultivation production is coming online in New Mexico, and new retailers are establishing the connections they need to secure supply. At the same time, some warn that production could soon outpace demand. In the coming fall, Croptober, outdoor harvest could flood the market and depress prices. Ben Lingwer, executive director of the New Mexico Cannabis Chamber of Commerce, a 140-member statewide organization based in Albuquerque, said that the market has shifted dramatically in the past 4 to 6 weeks. The wholesale price per pound is evident of that. Lingwer said that where 6 to 8 weeks ago a wholesale pound of flower was $4,000 range, which is incredible, good for them. They'll probably never see those prices again. But anyways. Most recent state sales data shows that the market is gaining momentum, with sales for July at $40.3 million, the strongest since the adult use program launched in April, despite a relatively small population of 2.1 million. New Mexico's recreational marijuana market is expected to achieve annual sales of up to $125 million in 2022, growing to as much as $40 million by 2025. According to projections from the 2022 MJ Biz Factbook, the state calls the cannabis companies that carried over from the medical market legacy producers. Those legacy producers help to ease the transition from medical to recreational and keep the supply relatively steady, Lingwer said. Another factor is the state increasing the allowed plant count from 1,750 cannabis plants per grow license to 20,000 mature plants per permit as of January. A key dynamic is at play in the border areas, in particular to the south and east, where New Mexico borders Texas, which has only a very limited medical marijuana market. When New Mexico's adult use market started in April, some cannabis retailers opened up shop with little to no products to sell. But supply is starting to catch up to demand, and retailers are asking for better deals on the wholesale cannabis, said Tony Martinez, co-owner of Lava Leaf, a marijuana cultivation operation in Aztec, New Mexico. Wholesale pounds of flower are selling for about $2,750, down from about $3,500 in April, according to Martinez. Quote, "There's definitely ample supply of flower," Martinez said, adding that he's went on a wholesale run last week and saw full shelves everywhere. Martinez has been growing licensed cannabis in the state for 7 years. Lava Leaf is growing about 2,000 and 50,000 plants, both outdoor and in climate-controlled greenhouses. So despite the initial concerns about long lines at retail stores and not enough supply when adult use sales begin, this wasn't true for everyone, so says Robert Jackson, executive director of 7 Point Farms, a legacy operator with a cultivation facility in Socorro and retail locations in Albuquerque, Cedar Crest, and Sirocco. Product variety and the availability of different strains did suffer some because of the lack of supply, Jackson said, but that's gotten better. As for the wholesale market, Jackson said he's seeing pounds of flower selling in the $2,500 to $3,400 range. So flower is also selling for $7 to $20 a gram at retail stores in his area. So super exciting stuff. Standard. There's always a supply issue where we don't have enough and then we have enough. Usually when we don't have enough, prices skyrocket. Basic economics, supply and demand type of situation. And you know, unless if they have something major happening with their testing, they will probably never see these types of price per pound again. So soak it up while you can, you know? Okay, in Oregon, we have quite a few different updates happening in Oregon. So let's start with this first one. Marijuana license moratorium. The 2022 Oregon legislature passed House Bill 4016, of which Section 1 imposes a moratorium on new producer, processor, wholesaler, and retail applications. The legislation requires that OLCC inactivate new applications received after January 1st, 2022 for these license types. For applications received on or before January 1st, 2022, applicants must timely submit a land use compatibility statement. And applicants may not change locations or ownership of these applications. This section of House Bill 4016 is effective upon passage, which requires OLCC to pass temporary rules to implement the license moratorium. The moratorium is in effect until March 31st, 2024. So another proposed change, so reporting of sex and human trafficking at licensed premises. So the 2022 Oregon legislature passed House Bill 4074, of which Section 2 states requirements for reporting sex trafficking or other human trafficking. Employees or workers at a cannabis licensed premise must report to law enforcement agency or the LLCC if the employee or worker has a reasonable belief that sex trafficking or human trafficking is occurring on the premise. Employees and workers must also report if they have a reasonable belief that a minor is employed or contracted at the premise in a manner that violates LLCC rules. So commissioners plan to tighten change of ownership option. Bad actors won't get easy off-ramp to sell their business. So the LLCC has grown tired of bad actors gaming the system when they're caught breaking the law or violating LLCC's rules. So commissioners plan to crack down on the group of licensees by limiting their ability to monetize their license. At their regularly scheduled 2021-2022 meeting, commissioners signaled that they want to take a new approach against cannabis operators facing license cancellation who want to sell their businesses through a change of ownership. That action requires the OLCC to use its discretion to facilitate issuing a new license to the buyer or the discredited cannabis business. The change of ownership is an option available even to licensees facing criminal charges for diverting cannabis into the illicit market or knowingly sell cannabis to children. The commissioners aren't advocating, nor do they have the authority to stop the sale of a licensed cannabis business. However, the value of that cannabis business is based on the ability of the new owner to receive a new license through a change of ownership, despite the current license moratorium. OLCC recreational cannabis licensees cannot be sold or transferred, although the sale of the business and the change of ownership go in hand and is usually pro forma. Oregon Senate Bill 408 provides a framework under which the OLCC can revoke a recreational cannabis license. The Commission wants to follow that framework to get bad actors out of the legalized system, but they don't want to reward alleged bad behavior by allowing the licensee to benefit financially through a change of ownership business sale. Commissioners believe that's how misbehaving licenses avoid their punishment for rule violations or breaking the law. The Commission directed the OLCC Administrative Hearings Division to consider the limit no change of ownership approach in these license violations cases going forward. In other matters before the Commission, representatives from the cannabis industry echoed the narrative commissioners heard during their visit. The narrative commissioners heard during their visit to Southern Oregon in June. The industry continues to be squeezed by low flower prices and excess production capacity. The continued federal limitation to banking services and deductible business expenses has brought additional financial hardship during the current inflationary period. Commissioners also appointed new agents to operate independently small business liquor stores in Junction City. Cindy Russ, whose mother was a liquor store agent for 40 years. And in St. Helens, sister and brother team Carly Bolander, currently managing an Oregon City liquor store, and Dustin Bolander currently owning the St. Helens liquor store. Okay, so this one, the LLCC investigates, detects banned ingredients in THC vape products. Licensee voluntary pulled product off the market. Product purchasers advised to consider potential risk of use. So the LLCC has made a preliminary finding that a THC vaping product contains a banned ingredient, was sold at 2 licensed cannabis retailers in Eastern Oregon. Ontario-based retailers Weedology and the Bud House voluntarily removed the products from their shelves in early July 2022. The investigation, which remains ongoing, initially determined that a flavored inhalable cannabinoid product line included an unapproved non-cannabis additive. The effective product was sold under YHN brand from November 12, 2021 until July 6, 2022. Both retailers combined sold about 18,000 units contained in packaging similar to the examples below. They're right here. Okay, and then just a quick metric update. So currently, LLCC producers and medical growers reporting to Metric are required to use single-use RFID tags on all individual plants 36 inches or higher. LLCC staff have heard concerns regarding the cost of these tags, both in terms of material costs as well as the labor costs of affixing and managing individual tags and the environmental factor. That's not an article, just my input. OLCC staff proposed amendments to plant tagging requirements that would reduce the number of RFID tags required in order to balance accountability for reporting and compliance with lower costs for producer licenses and medical growers required to report to Metric. See what happens. Proposed amendments. Hopefully they can get this on through. That would be dope. All right, in Utah, here's one we don't see very often. So they're just asking for public input for a meeting. Funny enough, they actually have in their regulations that as a stakeholder, you have to attend at least one of these meetings and give your input, if not multiple of them, which I just think is kind of funny, but good for them. So the DHHS Center for Medical Cannabis is holding a medical cannabis market analysis public input meeting on September 1st, 2022 from 3 to 5. This meeting is a hybrid in-person virtual access public meeting. It will be recorded both through audio and by written minutes, but both the audio recording and the meeting minutes will be posted on the DHHS Center for Medical Cannabis website. Awesome. And moving on to Washington. So the LCB message regarding pesticide deadline and testing. So this message is to address concerns raised recently by some cannabis licenses and labs about the implementation of pesticide testing requirements. Specifically, 2 issues have been raised that this message is intended to address. So number 1, the request to extend the deadlines. The LCB remains committed to the implementation deadlines established by WAC 314-55-102 subsection 11 and defined in policy statement PS-22-01 that describes rule phase-in and sell-down periods. During the rule project for testing, the LCB identified and made clear the need for mandatory pesticide testing of cannabis products. The intent was to have this safety improvement implemented without delay in considering a reasonable timeline for transition while maintaining the importance of consumer safety improvement. The LCB provides 6 months for the transition. This was the maximum amount of time the LCB would consider for a transition period. The intended result was to have all products harvested after April 2nd, 2022 be tested for pesticides. Extending this requirement beyond September would bring an unnecessary layer of complexity to the transition, as the LCB did not intend the exception to include the fall harvest. The rule project followed an extended project timeline, As early as 2018, several stakeholders, including medical cannabis patients, consumers, and licensees, urged the LCB to require cannabis producers and processors to test adult use cannabis crops for pesticides. Licensees have been aware of this interest for several years before rulemaking and adoption. Although the LCB would have liked the transition to occur sooner than currently afford, we do not want the transition time delayed into 2023, as it further deteriorates the importance of consumer safety. Agreed, as it does. The second concern. Concerns that some current products sold to retailers violate our long-standing pesticide limits. Industry members have expressed concern to the board and staff that some producers are rushing products to retailers they know exceed authorized pesticide levels in order to beat the September 30th, 2022 testing deadline. If true, this would be a violation of state rules as well as concerning to the LCB, consumers, medical patients, and for the majority of the producers who are following state regulations. Yeah, get your shit together. So just a social equity update here, letting you know, proposed rules filed for amendments and new rule sections to establish the social equity cannabis program. On August 3rd, 2022, during a regular scheduled meeting, the LCB took the following action. Proposed rules filed, public comment period now open. Approved proposed rulemaking CR 102 regarding amendments to existing rules in a new rule section that would establish the social equity in cannabis program in response to the recommendations of the Social Equity in Cannabis Task Force and other statutory requirements. The proposal creates a regulatory framework for the distribution of licenses that are currently available for cannabis retail licenses that have been subject to forfeiture, revocation, or cancellation by the board, or cannabis retail license that were not previously issued by the board, but could have been issued without exceeding the limit of the state number of cannabis retail licenses established by the board before January 1st, 2020. The proposal also changes the word marijuana to cannabis, thank goodness, throughout the rule sections to implement Second Substitute House Bill 2 SHB 1210, Chapter 16, Laws of 2022. Awesome. And moving on to our last update in the Western region. So this is just talking about accurate reporting of sales and taxes in the CCRS. Sorry, I just have to laugh because Washington's been through one hell of a time where I believe back in the past they were on BioTrack, and then they migrated from BioTrack to Leaf Data Systems. And then Leaf Data Systems, their contract was up, and then the state just reported their own reporting system that was extremely challenging to implement, and the whole tech aspects and the API and everything else. It just wasn't easy for a lot of third-party integrators. So it's just, yeah, is what it is. We always have this data entry problem, this human error entry problem, but yeah, let's dive into the update. So a review of sales reports submitted via CCRS indicate clarity is needed to ensure information is properly reported to the CCRS. The following provides clarity on reporting weekly retail sales to CCRS. Taxes. The taxes reported on this sales CSV are the sales tax and the other excise tax. Currently, these taxes are not being reported separately and appear to be reported as just sales tax with an incorrect amount not representative of the taxes being collected. The correct reporting requirements are as following. So sales tax is to be reported in column J on the sales CSV. Excise tax is in column K. Numeric entry, unit price, discount, sales tax, and other tax are all decimal type entries. Currently, entries in these columns are in whole numbers for a majority of reports. As a licensee responsible for the reporting requirements, accurately reporting is required. Please make sure that prices and taxes are entered correctly. Here's a thought. If you just want them to upload a CSV, how about you actually give them a file with the formulas and the formatting that you need? Like, this is so mind-boggling sometimes, but it's what it is. That is the Western updates for August 2022.